Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. The India-Canada ties have deteriorated in the last few days. On Thursday, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reiterated his charges against India. But after being asked several times on evidence to back his allegations, he just said that Canada has credible reasons to believe that Indian agents were involved in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. However, India has called these allegations absurd, motivated. Let me also remind you that the Ministry of External Affairs has officially said that Canada has still not shared any credible evidence or information on Nijjar's killing that they're using to link India to it. Canada's partners of the Five Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance have shown concern at Trudeau's allegations. They have urged for full investigations, but none of them have really stepped up to condemn India in the manner that possibly Trudeau was expecting from his global allies. It seems like Trudeau has thrown not just the relationship of his own country with India in jeopardy, but even those of the other Western countries who don't seem to be willing to be drawn into this war that is not of their making and possibly shouldn't have started in this fashion to begin with. The question that also arises is, why would or what compelled Trudeau to make public allegations against a country like India in the manner that he did when he cannot quite prove them in public due to the sensitive nature of the investigation and the evidence if he has any? Why did he escalate the matter to such an extent that it becomes a diplomatic row, dragging in other countries as well? Is it because he felt humiliated in India, as many are speculating, on his G20 visit? Or is it that he's being forced by unseen hands behind a velvet curtain? But the biggest question now is this. Now that he has pulled the trigger, can Justin Trudeau substantiate those serious allegations against India? We take that question to our guest joining us in just a bit. But let me first tell you what happened late last evening on Thursday. During a press conference, Justin Trudeau was bombarded with several questions. And really, as I said, the fundamental question is, where is the proof of what are they going to do to show that proof to the world now these allegations are public? Now, there are fundamental questions that Justin Trudeau ducked last night. One, of course, is on evidence to back his allegations against India. He even ducked the question on the lack of international support for his allegations, including partners like US and others. And he also ducked the question on India suspending visa services to Canadians, because possibly this is one of those steps that the Canadians did not see coming. But the question that really arises here is, as all of us are repeating, not just in India, but across the world now, where is the evidence? So I just want to take you through some of the statements that Justin Trudeau has made over the last week or so when he first spoke about this, and what has been the response, not just within Canada, but of course in India too. So take a look. On September 18, he said in the House of Commons, where this entire row began, that Indian agencies are linked in the Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar's case. He even called Nijjar a Canadian citizen, and of course, we can go into the background of Nijjar and how India disagrees with the stature that Canada is according to Nijjar, their Canadian citizen. But leaving that aside, the next day he seemed to climb down on it because possibly the realization was dawning that now they'll have to actually prove what they're suggesting in the very public manner. So then he says that we are not wanting to provoke India, we are just asking them to take the issue seriously. He reiterated that he had told this to Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he came to G20 and on the sidelines. On the next day, this is of course Pierre Poilievre, who's the Canadian leader of opposition. He himself put pressure on the Canadian Prime Minister that Trudeau should come clean with proper evidence. In fact, Pierre even went on to link Trudeau's actions that were much softer on China and their alleged interference in Canadian business than what he has done on India. Very important statement that the leader of opposition made there. The next day, Trudeau, when asked about proof, he again reiterates only this, that there is credible reason to believe that Indian agencies were involved. Now here's the question, do prime ministers, head of states go to public and make this such a diplomatic row on credible reasons, potential risks, credible allegations, no matter how you term it? There is of course a way to handle this, even if he believed that this was of serious importance. I also want to remind our viewers that, of course, the Indian MEA on allegations has said categorically that Canada has not shared any evidence or information yet. And of course, they have reiterated, and there's evidence for it, that India over the years has shown a lot of evidence against a lot of these fugitives who run away from India, and majority of them have settled in Canada. So the big question once again continues to be exactly why did Justin Trudeau take the step that he took in the manner that he took, and what is the way out for Canada now? Canada's allies have also not responded in the manner that Trudeau would have hoped. I just want to, for the benefit of our viewers, take you through statements that have been made by some of the Five Eyes nations. There is, of course, a story which alleges that Justin Trudeau, before the G20 summit, did ask these countries to show more support or garner support on this issue. But when the G20 happened and all of these leaders were in India, they completely ignored that issue. We'll of course deal with that in just a bit. So United States, one of the Five Eyes member, all they have said is that we are in close contact with Canada, and they've also added that we will of course urge India to cooperate in the investigation as well. UK, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, has said that it's inappropriate to comment during a probe. Now, this is ideally how a head of state responds. The probe is on, there is no charge sheet in Canada, nobody has even been arrested on the charges that Justin Trudeau has made in Canada. Their police needs to show something, at least have the shooter or one of the shooters in custody before they can say they have credible allegations. They've also, of course, Rishi Sunak also said that there will be no halting of trade ties or talks with India. Very quickly, Australia, Anthony Albanese has said that they are deeply concerned by the allegations and that they are going to take this up with India, that they've conveyed their concerns to India. So most of the countries have tried to take the allegations seriously, but they've not really come out, making India the villain that Canada is trying to, and Canada is seemingly getting isolated, at least on that front. But the big question that we're taking forward with our guests is this: can Justin Trudeau substantiate these charges? His entire international merit is actually now resting on this.
There are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. And we call upon the government of India to engage with us to move forward on getting to the truth of this matter.
The larger issues of terrorism, and not just terrorism, but also the fact that it is being funded and supported, and we know this for some time from our western neighbor Pakistan. But the issue of safe havens and places to operate is being provided abroad, including in Canada.
Let me go across to our guest joining us. Shashank is former Foreign Secretary of India. Ritesh Malik is President, Canada-India Foundation. Sameer Kaushal is Senior Canadian Journalist who's joining us from Vancouver. And Professor Max Abrams is International Security Expert, one of those that Prime Minister Narendra Modi met on his last US visit. Let me go across to Shashank first. The diplomatic row that has kicked off due to Justin Trudeau's very public allegations against India, which he continues to reiterate. Do you believe he's dug himself into a bit of a hole? Because now the onus of proving those, allegations very publicly will be on Canada. They will have to produce something. Otherwise, there's no reason why India should accept any of this.
Yeah, there are two aspects. One is that Prime Minister Trudeau talked about credible allegations initially. Now he's saying that credible evidence, which means that he's saying everything in public to give a bad name to India. And he took a public decision in the parliament that he would be sending away a senior Indian diplomat who must have been posted there with the reciprocal approval of the two governments, that somebody posted from the Indian side, from the security side to Canada, and similarly is Canadian security official posted in India. Now, in these matters, when you're trying to develop strategic partnerships, when you're trying to control terrorism, you exchange a lot of information, you post these people, but they are only the point persons. There would be other levels at which the exchange of information would be taking place. Now, you remove the person publicly, and then you reiterate that in the UN. So I think India will have to take a decision now, apart from the bilateral action which we have taken, that in the UN also we have certain UN resolutions about controlling terrorism. There is a counter-terrorism committee, there is a financial action task force.
Exactly.
India has all these various resolutions in the G20 declaration, in many other BRICS summit, etc., where their talk is of how to control terrorism and action to be taken by all member governments to control terrorism. And India has been saying, thirdly, that India has been passing on a lot of information, all these dossiers, very frankly, with the other friendly governments.
Yes.
Now, not to take any action on them, but then to pass on all the blame on India and then try to make it appear as if they have got this information from the Indian diplomatic sources themselves, because they have been hacking the phones and internet connections and other connections of the Indian diplomats.
No, so there is some reports, and these are now coming via leaks in Canadian media, that they seem to have some evidence of conversations of Indian diplomats in Canada speaking about Nijjar's killing, etc., which they feel is going to be evidence. But like I said, we cannot quite go by those media leaks or speculations alone. I do want to reiterate my question, Mr. Shashank, one more time. The fact that you've now made this a public fracas, you will have to naturally present something in public, even though such intelligence or proof is never put in the public domain. Now, you could have accepted that till the time Justin Trudeau didn't make this into a public tamasha.
No, again, I would say that they are thinking in terms of putting pressure on India,
right,
for various reasons. Now, who are the factors behind this? Is it Pakistan? Is it China? Is it George Soros? Or is it the Five Eyes have taken a decision that while in G20 publicly they would praise India,
yes,
but otherwise they will try to put pressure on India to abide by their agenda on global issues and to see that India does not take an independent posture on many of the international issues. So I don't know whether they are taking a right decision or not, but I think they are going to on a slippery slope, and the bilateral relations and the other relations will be through a tough time.
No, I'm happy you mentioned that, because I think the realization is also settling in India that this couldn't be Canada operating on its own. It must have some backstage support from US, which is almost a twin-like ally, and other countries who don't want to fight this with India anymore. But of course, there is information after information of how a lot of these assets that have been used in Kashmir, in Khalistan, in Pakistan, actually have been controlled by the Western powers as well. So I'll come to that question in just a bit, because there's also another report that quotes Indian NSA Ajit Doval very interestingly in a connection to CIA. But I want to quickly go across to some of our other guests as well. Samir, I want to come to you. In Canada, from where you're joining, is there a sense that Justin Trudeau has backed himself into a corner?
Thank you so much, Shivani, for the question and for taking me. I think to understand this whole, as you said, tamasha, we have to understand the domestic politics of Canada as well. Canada, I already mentioned on so many platforms that Canada is going through so many challenges. And before the parliamentary session, Justin Trudeau's popularity was tanking down. Even still, it's tanking down, and he has to answer on so many issues, whether it's a housing affordability, whether it's inflation, whether it's a foreign interference by China. So China is the biggest operator in interfering in Canadian local politics, provincial politics, and federal politics. And believe me, RCMP was investigating China's role. China was operating 5 police stations on Canadian soil. So the opposition parties, including the Alliance Party, NDP, Jagmeet Singh was asking for a public inquiry, and public inquiry going to take any day. I mean, it's going to start. So right now, so many people are thinking this, that just to divert the attention of all those issues, Justin Trudeau, including India's name into all this.
Yeah, but
this issue.
they could have taken this case up with India, but I think it is more the manner in which Justin Trudeau has chosen to do it. As you said, there could be domestic compulsions, but I do want to understand from you once again, is there a sense in Canada that this could have been handled more deftly instead of being so blunt about it?
There is a lot of confusion, but on the other hand, because of the domestic, the background I told you, what we feel that somebody twisted Mr. Prime Minister's arm to go public at this level, because this is unprecedented, that you go to your parliament, your House of Commons, and say and allege another sovereign nation
that to a friendly country.
Absolutely, and without any evidence. Not just only one time he alleges this. Even yesterday, when he was in New York on United Nations General Council meeting, he once again said this. He never said this. That these are the credible allegations. He said we have credible reasons to believe.
Yes, from credible allegations, it became credible. It became credible reasons, because I think that term "credible allegations" was drawing a lot of ire globally, that he had initially used of a potential link to Nijjar's killing. But what is also interesting is that a lot of his party members and others, and I want to go to Ritesh Malik on this, because you are the president of the Canada-India Foundation. You deal a lot with the diaspora and people back at home in India as well. What this episode has done, Ritesh, is it has brought a lot of the muck out of, from under the carpet onto the surface. All of these information that India has been providing for decades to Canada on these nefarious activities linked to Khalistan secessionist movement going on in Canada, uninterrupted, characters like Pannu issuing threats, now asking for the Hindu Canadian community to leave the country. And we don't see any alarm on that. But the Canadian establishment seems to be very worried about this Nijjar, who I don't know why they love so much that they've jeopardized the relationship with India for this one guy.
Shivani, thank you for having me and asking this. As you say, our foundation, Canada-India Foundation, our major mandate is how these two countries can work together, India and Canada. And there cannot be any sort of relationship if there is no diplomatic relationship, like people-to-people relationship, business relationship, cultural relationship. And we've been advocating this for quite a long time now, that India, Canada need to resolve whatever issues they have. And one of the main issues, what we have also seen, is this, extremism in Canada. And this extremism, it's not just about their demand, what they say is a peaceful demand, but it's a very violent and extreme kind of situation on the ground, where anybody who actually talks of peace between India and Canada, good relationship between India and Canada, any sane talk is very highly opposed on the pretext of freedom of expression. But we always say and question this to all our respected elected representatives here, why this freedom of expression is only granted to people who are aggressive, who are violent, or who have extreme ideology. Like anybody sane who opposes this ideology is attacked, countered, bullied, their wife, their children, everybody is targeted. And we feel as Canadians that our government has not done enough to actually protect people who talk sense about relationship between Canada and India. Like a lot of times, even people who will talk sane, they will be targeted as they are agents of India, or they are more loyal to India. But that's not the case. I mean, our loyalty is not to be questioned. I mean, we are living in Canada, we are Canadians, but that does not mean that we have no interest in India or no inclination towards India.
No, so the diaspora sentiments have to be respected. But you're so right, Ritesh. I'm glad you brought this up. This whole facade and canard over freedom of expression and speech. Now, it's fine. Nobody is asking you to curb on that. And Justin Trudeau, when he came to India, reiterated this, that we stand for freedom of speech. We stand for freedom of protest. Well and good enough. although we saw what happened to the truckers' protest in Canada. Leaving that aside, he reiterated that, they brought up government interference to take Sameer's point forward with the Prime Minister. Had he left it at that, it wasn't a big row. But to link India to a killing without giving justified reasons is another matter. But on freedom of speech, no action happens on those who are supporters of Pannu. Pannu has an US-Canada dual citizenship. He's issuing threats. He makes videos on secessionism, which is not, a freedom to ask for secessionism from another country, another democratic sovereign country. But Canada doesn't seem to act on that. All the liberal values of Justin Trudeau cannot hide him from the fact that there is violent speech going on against Indian diplomats and now against the Hindu community in Canada. But Mr. LeBlanc, who's the public safety minister, has only just said that, this is not allowed. What are you going to do?
Shivani, we would have appreciated, if our Prime Minister stood for us and said, when this guy from SFJ released a video 2-3 days ago, saying all the Hindus or, Canadians Indo-Canadians who actually talk about India to go back to India. I mean, we would have appreciated our Prime Minister to take a stand that, no, I don't, it's not freedom of expression. And, Hindus or Indo-Canadians, for majority, even Sikhs, like there are majority of Sikhs who are very, very, very loyal to India and they still relate to India more than anything else. They have nothing to do with this Khalistan issue. So all these people, I mean, like when they try to oppose, we want our government, our elected representatives to support us and also give us assurance that, if you are saying that as your freedom of expression, you are also protected by Charter of Freedom the way they claim that they are protecting Khalistanis. I mean,
absolutely.
It cannot be.
It is exactly these misplaced priorities that India has been accusing Canada of giving shelter to secessionist elements against India who are violent, who issue threats, and in an escalation of diplomatic language. Yesterday, the MEA very clearly said that Canada has safe havens for terrorists, and there is evidence to back that, because a lot of the fugitives, majority of the fugitives from India have actually taken shelter in Canada than any other country. I want to go across to Max Abrams also. Max, this has of course become some sort of an international issue as well, even though some of the other countries are not quite getting involved. Now, these allegations that Trudeau has made, going public in the manner that it is, do you feel that he has handled this rightly or wrongly? Did he escalate this too much, too quickly?
I think that Trudeau, in retrospect, would have handled this entire situation very differently. The fallout with India has been substantial and appears, unfortunately, to be escalating in terms of kicking out diplomats, in terms of suspending visas. Another reason why I think that Trudeau regrets his approach to all of this is that he's not getting very much support from his traditional Western allies. The so-called Five Eyes alliance, but particularly the United States, has been noticeably muted in supporting Trudeau. Now, it's true that just yesterday, the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said, if indeed it turns out that the Indian government was involved in this attack, then there are no countries which get an exemption, which is implying that even India, with its strong relationship with the United States, wouldn't be exempt. However, that's rather muted, given the severity of the allegations and the fact that the US and Canada also have a long-standing close relationship. And so the fallout to Trudeau has been substantial, and it's hard to see how he benefits from approaching it in this manner.
No, so, from that also arises the question, why did Trudeau do what he did in this public manner, where he cannot quite present the evidence even if he had any? Not only are his opposition leaders now asking for evidence, because he has acted in the manner he has done, he has dragged not only India into the public, into a public brawl of sorts. But Max, he's also drawn some of the Western partners, some of the other countries who don't seem to be wanting to get into this fight.
I do think it was a mistake for Trudeau to very publicly blame the Indian government without providing the requisite intelligence to back it up. It's created this huge diplomatic storm, which doesn't just involve India and Canada, but involves the other Western countries. And now it's very understandable that that India and supporters of India around the world would say to Trudeau, okay, you've claimed to have evidence, now let's see it. Historically, the Indian government has, in some ways, coddled Khalistani extremists in their country. And as we saw with the Air India terrorist attack in 1985, those investigations can take years.
You mean Canada?
I mean,
yes.
Even over a decade. So who knows? In this case, Canada might say, well, we're going to investigate, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that intel to come out.
Yeah, but I do feel that Justin Trudeau's personal reputation is now staked on this, on how this goes. Mr. Shashank, I want to come back to you on the point that you raised. And there is interestingly a report which talks about Ajit Doval telling the CIA director that he feels, or India feels, the only fact that SFJ's Pannu is not taken down or arrested by US or Canadian authorities where he holds dual citizenship is because he could very much be a tool for America. Do you feel that there are double games or games within games going on here?
Well, suspicion is aroused. The Americans have a normal system that they don't allow dual nationality. If anybody gets an American passport, they send the information to all the concerned embassies with the list every month of the list of people who have acquired American citizenship, so that then they are not entitled to the other citizenship. It is a different matter that the other country, like in the case of Israel, like in the case of Poland, like in the case of Canada, or even Pakistan, that they allow their people of their origin to travel on their passports.
Yes.
But the fact remains that Pannu, since he is a US citizen, he is not entitled to have a Canadian passport and speak from Canadian soil about taking action against the people within Canada or action in India. I think that is really all not acceptable. So that is where the suspicion is aroused that perhaps the Americans are trying to work on that. And the same thing happens with the Canadians. Because Nijjar applied twice to get the Canadian passport. He traveled on a forged document and the Canadians rejected his application twice. So how did he suddenly become such a prized asset for the Canadian intelligence that the Prime Minister himself is staking his reputation on this guy Nijjar, who is shown being trained in Pakistan, firing AK-47s and training other people to do that and forcing other people in India to kill reputed politicians or other people. So this is not accepted in India. And I'm quite sure that what India has reacted, apart from reciprocating the Canadian action to send out one of the senior diplomats, that they have said, look, there is a threat to the Indian missions in Canada, and we have to make sure that our people are protected. So we are stopping all the visa
applications. So do you think, in your experience, is this somewhat of an unprecedented situation, not just in our relationship with Canada, but for any Western country, for us, what is transpiring now between India and Canada?
Well, it's unprecedented in the sense that in the 80s, I remember I was in Pakistan, and at that time our Western friends, diplomat friends, used to tell us that, look, like Americans have their Jews in America and they have influence in Israel, so they control all the Middle Eastern countries with this situation. And they prefer to have something similar between India and Pakistan by forming a state called Khalistan, and they are encouraging this. So they accepted it openly in our private discussions. But now situation has changed. And now we are finding that, especially after the BRICS summit, expanded BRICS and the G20 and our association with the Southeast Asian nations and East Asia Summit and Quad and all these new formulations. So I think we were thinking that now things are going to change and they will move beyond the old paradigm that they have to have a Khalistan to arm twist India and to supply arms to both India and Pakistan and to make sure that both of them are at each other's throat.
Yeah, but
now,
many also believe that now since Kashmir cannot be used in the same manner and Pakistan has been made quite useless in that respect and America seems to have come around on that given that they've exited from Afghanistan. Now Khalistan is the front where they're trying to press more and we can expect that more of these flare-ups will happen one way or the other, and internally too we should be very careful. I have limited time, so I'll go across to Sameer and Ritesh one more time. Sameer, I just want to understand from you, how worried are you that given what Justin Trudeau has done, India-Canada relationships could be marred for a very long time, if not for forever?
As a Canadian, I think our first priority of a relationship between our communities, the Hindu community, especially in Canada, they are feeling scared. They are feeling threatened by, the video and the way some fringe elements are, taking the charge. And the police is not doing anything. The intelligence agencies are not doing anything. It's not only Mr. Hardeep Singh Nijjar who has been shot down. There are so many other people, those who have been shot down in the last few years. And no voice has been raised at this level. So why only Mr. Hardeep Singh Nijjar? Though we condemn every kind of violence on any soil by anybody. And I think Mr. Justin Trudeau, why he's asking for a cooperation from India, if he's having any kind of credible evidence, he should put a person behind the bar, whoever he or she is. And why to create all this scene on an international platform and straining a relation within a biggest democracy in the world?
Yes, and you're right. I'm glad you brought that up. That actually Nijjar is not the only shooting in a gang war that has taken place. Of course, another gangster was shot down after him. If you look at some of the crime reports in Canada, these shootings are actually a routine affair in some of the pockets. These gang wars have been going on for many years, as Sameer would also vouch for. So it's not like, a peaceful society, community was suddenly shocked by a killing like this. And it is of, that something like this doesn't happen. It happens quite regularly in Canada, actually. Ritesh, I want to give you a word in and the same question. How worried are you about Indo-Canadian relationships because of what has transpired? Do you think some sense will prevail?
Eventually it will prevail. We are really worried. We've been getting a lot of calls from community members, people all over the place, students, parents of students and whatnot. But I would want to use your platform to just say a few things which might actually give some common sense to all this. I mean, I want to convey this message that, majority of Sikhs are not Khalistanis or supporters of Khalistan.
Absolutely.
And all these Khalistanis are not real Sikhs. And we need to understand that we do not need to look at every Sikh as that. Not these people are Khalistanis. And majority of Indo-Canadians here want great relationship between Canada and India. Like Canada and India are our lifelines. I mean, India is our motherland and Canada is our homeland. We've chosen homeland. So we want them to flourish in every possible way. One thing which I think if Canada can work on is if they can give equal rights of expression and speech to every Indo-Canadian as they have given to Khalistanis.
Yes.
I think Canada themselves will see how many people oppose them or are against them. The only big problem is because these people have their ears and eyes in the government, bureaucracy, everywhere. So they bully everyone, and there are a lot of people who resist this ideology and their thought process are not able to speak up.
If
they are allowed in Canada.
So if the liberal standards were to be applied, then actually Justin Trudeau should be standing with those who are being bullied, as you say.
Absolutely. If Canada can assure every Indo-Canadian that they will be protected and they will have equal right to speech and expression, I mean, you will see within a week that they will not be even seen anywhere because there are 90% people who will come out and oppose their ideology.
Absolutely. It's always a small minority. In fact, Justin Trudeau said that actions of a few should not be painted over every member of the community or Canada, and we agree with him. But at least act on those few, on those minority individuals who are completely hijacking the narrative and the entire relationship between India and Canada. I do want to ask.
We as Canadians.
Yes, Ritesh.
I said we as Canadians just need to walk the talk.
Okay, walk the talk. That's a good one. My final question to Max also, since you track international relationships so closely, how do you think this high-stakes game, diplomatic standoff is playing out? Exactly who is coming out looking better right now?
I don't think that there has been the kind of outrage internationally which Trudeau seems to have anticipated. Modi is a very popular leader around the world. Everybody, all the countries want to befriend India, not just the United States and the West, but also the United States and the West adversaries. Russia wants to maintain strong relations with India. China certainly doesn't want a growing conflict with India. And so I think that this conflict really highlights India's geopolitical importance.
Well, which is why, again, people are questioning the judgment that Justin Trudeau has displayed. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. We'll track this big story very closely. Time for a very short break. On the other side, a special conversation with Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, not just on the Women's Reservation Bill, which has finally become a reality, at least has been passed by Parliament after 27 years of fight, but lots more, including Canada itself. Stay tuned.